So it has finally been formally announced that unified heavyweight champion Oleksandr Usyk will have his long-awaited rematch against Anthony Joshua on the 20th of August in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I don't know about you guys, but I was starting to doubt whether this fight was going to happen at all. It always seemed to be Eddie Hearn in interviews saying, big announcement next week, we're going to have news next week, it's going to be signed next week. And that was happening week after week after week. Going off from memory, I think the earliest proposed dates for this rematch were actually April and May, or May, should I say. We're now in June, so this goes to show how far this rematch has been pushed back. And it does seem like it's officially signed, sealed and delivered for August. Though, you know, dates can sometimes fall through. This is boxing, strange things happen. But I think it's fair to assume that this fight will go ahead. And let's have a little talk about it. Talking about the delay, first and foremost, I know there have been issues securing a venue because they have plenty of options. It's deciding, I imagine, which one's going to stump up the most money. They've settled on Saudi Arabia, which is hardly surprising, seeing how well moneyed the Saudis are. But I also think there is a bit more of an intended delay on behalf of Team Joshua, because it's no secret that Anthony Joshua has been shopping around, especially in the States, looking for new trainers and trialing trainers to see who he gels with and who can help him going into this rematch. And I'm not privy to what goes on behind the scenes, but I'm fairly confident that this has, as I say, been intentional by Team Joshua, just to buy him more time to go to a trainer, try it, have a few sessions and see if it gels with him in preparation prior to him starting a training camp formally. And to be honest, I can't blame Joshua if this is actually the case, because like many of you guys, I'm sure, I don't have much confidence in Joshua's chances going into this rematch. He was soundly beaten in the first fight, as many people predicted he would be. Personally, I thought it was going to be a competitive fight where Usyk deserved to win, but I thought the financial powerhouse behind Joshua would ensure that he got the rub of the green. But Usyk really didn't leave anything to chance. Of course, we've seen it by now. He hurt Anthony Joshua on multiple occasions, completely outskilled him. And I don't think Joshua disgraced himself, because I like to be realistic and take into consideration a fighter's limitations. Now, Joshua, I made a study on Joshua's performance. I called it Anthony Joshua's Small Successes Against Oleksandr Usyk. And at points, AJ was able to just catch Oleksandr Usyk out, because he's aware of what Oleksandr Usyk is trying to do, but his skills and his IQ just aren't experienced enough. They're just not tempered enough to keep up with Oleksandr Usyk, who in his own right is an immensely skilled, immensely talented fighter, but also his skill and his talent has been compounded by years and years of fighting elite level competition as an amateur and a professional. So Joshua knows what he has to do, but he just can't execute it quick enough. He hasn't had enough practice, and that's why you have to give Anthony Joshua credit, because he's still largely on a big learning curve in his career. And so he needs time. Anthony Joshua is someone who's been fast-tracked his whole career, and so when he's in these situations, that's exactly what he needs. He needs time. And just to put into perspective, if we go back a couple of years, I had full confidence in Joshua going into the Ruiz rematch. And it's not because I'm any kind of boxing genius or something, but I looked at the first performance that Joshua had against Ruiz in the first fight, and he was outboxing and almost beating up Ruiz in that first round, or the first few rounds. But he got greedy, he made a mistake, and Andy Ruiz, to his credit, took that opportunity. He seized it and caught it with both hands and capitalized and became unified heavyweight champion. But going into the rematch, I was damn near certain that Andy Ruiz didn't actually know how he could get himself back into that position. And so Joshua lost that fight because he made a mistake. Whereas all he really had to do was not make that mistake in the rematch. It's precisely what he did. He changed his style and won that fight 11 rounds to 1, 10 to 2 maybe. on most people's scorecards. However, in the first Usyk fight, you can make the argument that Joshua was never in the fight to begin with. I certainly hold that point of view, because from the opening bell, you saw Usyk get into positions he wanted to get off the offense he wanted to get off in the opening seconds. And it was, hindsight's a beautiful thing, but I remember explicitly stating in my pre-fight video that if Oleksandr Usyk was able to do X, Y, Z, like, for example, get outside the lead hand of Anthony Joshua, that's it. It's game over, really. And, Usyk went on to win that fight with relative ease, I guess you could say. So, yeah, this fight, look, you guys should know by now, I'm not the biggest fan of immediate rematches, but I suppose enough time has elapsed. If this fight had happened, or if it was scheduled to happen, a couple months earlier, I wouldn't be so interested in it. Personally, I would like to see Oleksandr Usyk go on to fight Tyson Fury and consolidate the belts. May the best man win and we find out who the undisputed champion is. But this is the fight we've got, and it will be interesting to see what Anthony Joshua can do, because if he comes back in this rematch and loses, say, by stoppage to Oleksandr Usyk, it's still going to be interesting to see what the future of Anthony Joshua is. Or imagine if he comes back and he's in a super, super tough competitive fight with Oleksandr Usyk, loses by a couple of rounds, but he really holds his own and shows genuine improvement. That's also very interesting. Or flip side for Oleksandr Usyk, if he just scrapes by and defends his belt, or imagine if he just blasts AJ away. There's still some interest in this fight. So I can say I'm glad it's happening, but it is what it is. That's me being a glass is half full. Is there anything else I want to talk about with this fight? Because I've spoken about how I'm not particularly confident in Joshua's chances. Oleksandr Usyk, I suppose I can give an early prediction prospectively. I am tempted to go with Oleksandr Usyk by stoppage, but I think Joshua's going to be aware that Oleksandr Usyk, despite being considerably smaller, can hurt him. So I do think Joshua's potentially going to go and fight a bit more of a safety first fight, even though some people say that's the antithesis of what he has to do. But realistically, we've heard it for months already, and I take issue with it, because people say Joshua just needs to follow the blueprint that Derek Chisora laid out in his fight against Oleksandr Usyk. That's, in my head, it's silly. And it's silly because, firstly, Derek Chisora didn't really have that much success against Oleksandr Usyk. I think people need to watch that fight again. Yeah, it looks a bit rugged, like a bit ragged and a bit rough, but that's what Derek Chisora does. He's very rarely in a neat and tidy fight. And even though he makes the fight look like that, he's not getting off that much. Oleksandr Usyk just soundly beats Derek Chisora and then buzzes him on multiple occasions throughout that fight. So we've nipped that in the bud, like right then. But then additionally, just because I guess you could say that is a more effective way to fight Oleksandr Usyk, it doesn't necessarily mean that Joshua can fight that way. Because him and Derek Chisora, yeah, they operate at different levels. They're still completely different fighters. They're different physically. They have different attributes. They have different skills, different weaknesses. It's silly, in my opinion, to say Joshua just needs to fight like Derek Chisora, because he's never fought that way. Derek Chisora fought Oleksandr Usyk the way Derek Chisora has fought nearly the entirety of his career. You can't just expect Joshua to come in and do that. It's unrealistic. Could Joshua maybe learn a thing or two, and maybe he does need to bite down on his gum shield at times and look to impose himself? Yeah, you could say that, but even then, that's easier said than done, especially when you see that Oleksandr Usyk can clearly hurt Joshua. And Joshua knows that. Oleksandr Usyk knows that, and we all know it. So, can Joshua blast Oleksandr Usyk out? I'm sure he can, because we're talking about heavyweights here. We're talking about 18 stone men in Joshua's case, high 17 stone, and he's fast. If you can accelerate that weight, you can knock out pretty much any human being. However, that's fighting. We're talking about boxing. And can Joshua do it? yeah, potentially, but I wouldn't bet on it. So I'm pretty confident in Oleksandr Usyk winning this fight, all things being equal. Could he stop Joshua? Maybe. But personally, I think Joshua knows that he could be stopped, and therefore he's going to maybe opt for a safety first approach. But the fight's a little while away. We're talking about 2 months tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see the build up to this fight. And of course, it's a big event in its own right. It's a meaningful fight, unified heavyweight titles. So yeah, looks like it's roll on the 20th of August in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll get back to you as always. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.